Happy Dussehra from Marketing Learn Chain, a channel where learning happens through a chain of snippets. Today, we talk about the new normal and a few simple business fallouts of this new normal. Lessons which I picked up from my very first home haircut day a couple of days back. This Monday morning, I had my very first haircut at home. Remember, haircut at home has never happened in the last 50 odd years. Murugan came in at sharp 8 o'clock in the morning, and by 8:15 the process was over. That 15-minute muse has led to this 15-minute video. Today, I dwell upon this emerging paradigm, this so-called new normal and its implications on scale, capacity, return on assets, margin and cost. Let us start with scale. We all adore scale, be it the width of the Buckingham Palace in London or the height of the Statue of Liberty in New York. Had Burj Khalifa or Petronas Towers been only 15-story buildings, how many of us would have taken selfies in front of it? Each of those selfies is a tribute to scale. Over the years, books have been written extolling scale. Industry doyen and founder of Mindtree Subrata Bagchi, in his famous book The Elephant Catchers, tried to differentiate the skill required for hunting rabbits versus catching elephants. Here he uses elephant as a metaphor for scale. Similarly, academician Jagdish Seth, in his book The Rule of Three, talks that in any industry, the top three firms of the industry will eventually garner 70 to 80% of the total revenue of that industry. The book is called The Rule of Three. Incidentally, I have been lucky in meeting both these gentlemen. I was there for the book launch of The Elephant Catchers of Subrata Bagchi in Chennai, and I have met Dr. Jagdish Seth more than once in conferences in Bangalore. Let us now look at some popular industry buzzwords, starting from the simple answer of grid to capacity planning and capacity management to the much touted mantra of experience curve to the current startup funding magic to mergers and acquisitions and finally even to market capitalization. Look carefully, they are all directly connected to scale. But will the new normal require a revisiting of that parameter called scale? Let us revisit scale from a new normal perspective by focusing on my haircutting muse. Haircutting, once upon a time, started on the roadside. Absolutely zero capex, practically no fixed cost, and close to zero variable cost. From there on, it moved to a ramshackle shed with some property cost, some capex, very marginal fixed cost, and continuing the trend of zero variable cost. Then over the 80s and a large part of the 90s, we had the typical two-seater or three-seater air-conditioned saloon with a modest capex, modest fixed cost, and a non-trivial variable cost. At the turn of the millennium or thereabouts, the game simply scaled up to the so-called five-star saloon with extensive capex, expensive equipment, detailed hair care, a lot of fixed cost, and tons of variable cost. From there on, it took the flavor of an industry with players like Green Trends, Naturals, Tony and Guy, Javed Habib and others. The names here are just indicative in telling you that this has taken the flavor of an industry. They took capex, fixed cost and variable cost to a completely different level. Today, when we're talking about today, I'm explicitly talking about today, we have come back. We have come back to zero capex, zero fixed cost. The haircutting was done at my home in my premises using my air conditioning and at near zero variable cost because I insisted that I do not want a shave. The only tool used was a humble pair of scissors. Can't you guess other big ticket industries that will literally turn this complete circle in terms of scale thanks to the new normal? From scale, we move to capacity. Let us now look at its new normal implications. The area required for one resource is 8 by 6 square feet. Add the area of the partitions and you get approximately 50 square feet per resource. Imagine the scale of unused capacity that is going to develop if these things are going to happen. Tata Consultancy has already spelled out its vision 25-25. By year 2025, only 25% of its workforce would be required to come to office, and that too only for 25% of their total working time. Infosys is talking about a 33 to 50% of its employees over time working permanently from home. Americans have gone further overboard, and Twitter is leading the charge by telling that from now on, none of their employees need to come to office to work at all. This leads me to an interesting study done in Japan by Horio and Watanabe 2008, which was published in the Journal of Services Research. The study plots energy consumption per unit production on the y-axis and the share of service industry in GDP on the x-axis. So when the service industry starts growing from 50% to 55% to 60%, it's obvious that the energy consumption required for one incremental unit of production keeps falling. But this falling is not permanent. Once it crosses about 65%, then what we are finding is there is something called a rebound effect, and the energy consumption per unit production for subsequent increase of services is on the higher side. This is attributed to multiple factors like overusage of IT, like overlooking the significance of substitution, the phenomena which we know as the diseconomies of scale, and finally the inelastic demand for energy. We will buy energy irrespective of its price. Will this rebound effect get compounded by unused capacity is a story which we will have to wait and watch. Let us now look at the third parameter, return on assets, and its new normal implications. By no stretch of imagination am I an expert in finance, but this is my conjecture that the new normal world would be heading towards something called an off-balance sheet activity or off-balance sheet accounting practice known as OBS. There are two fallouts for this. One fallout is all corporates today are sitting on huge pile of real estate assets and they form a significant chunk in the balance sheet. Once these assets are going to get unutilized or underutilized, they can be removed from the balance sheet, which is what OBS is all about. I do not want to get into the details, but once this asset is getting removed from the balance sheet, the firm now, assuming has got an identical return, has got a far better ROA. Returns are the same, assets have come down, so the return on assets is far better. Obviously, the stock markets are going to take note of that and reward the firm. On the other side, by the same coin, removal of assets on one side reduces the liability by the same measure on the other side. That is why it is called a balance sheet. A reduced liability indicates a far stronger debt to equity position. The firm now appears to be far less leveraged, and suddenly its credit worthiness looks far better, looks enhanced, and stock markets are further going to get impressed. As far as I am concerned, this is a double doom. A doom one in terms of a John Abraham look in terms of having a better ROA, and a doom two, a Kritik Roshan look of having enhanced credit worthiness. Let us wait and watch. Coming to margins and then thereon to pricing, we need to adopt a beginner's mind to discover patterns from seemingly unrelated constructs. Let us start with something called the customer value proposition or CVP. Today, a slew of customer value propositions are emerging in the so-called new normal. The obvious one is contactless commerce. What could be its implications? From CVP, we move to a slew of new competences with the most common buzzword today is let us go digital. It's a very amorphous statement. What is digital? To what depths different industries need to go digital? There is no universal benchmark. From there, we move to asset holding, which is what we discussed a few minutes back. What is the advantage of an asset-light corporation today? From asset holding, we move to completely new consumer or customer segments. Two COVID-related segments that are emerging are the so-called deep cut customer and the hibernating customer. The deep cut one has more or less completely stopped buying everything other than essentials. The hibernating is more or less having that attitude, but he is in a wait and watch mode. How long will deep cut and hibernation continue in the new normal? We have to wait and watch. This again is industry dependent. Another area which we need to look at is what are the new skill sets required, and I promise you that a completely new skill set which is required today for many an industry is creativity. It is not just confined to a Kamal Hassan or a Rajnikant. Many industries require their people to be extraordinarily creative today. Take the simple faculty. At one point of time, he used to talk directly to students. Today, he talks to a camera. He is an actor. Suddenly, his gesticulations, his voice modulation, his phonetics, his choice of words, his abridging of what he needs to tell, everything requires a completely different level of creativity. From creativity, we move to technology. Technology today is quadrangulating the old triangle of company, customer, and employee. All relations between a company and a customer, a company and an employee, and a customer and employee is being triggered today, is being modulated today by a slew of new technologies. From technology, we move to cost. Is it a game of cost reduction or a game of cost restructuring today? Are we able to trace back all our cost? Are we able to move enough of fixed cost to variable cost? Are we doing enough of sliced activity-based costing? From cost structures, we move to alliances, be it with collaborators or even with competitors. Today, the buzzword is value co-creation. All this and much more actually lead to a completely new regime of margins and a very new regime of pricings in the new normal. Finally, we come to cost and the new normal. As I mentioned earlier, we adore scale and hence worship economies of scale. But we should remember that wherever economies of scale start, diseconomies of scale will automatically follow, and it has got manifestations both internal and external. Take the classic case of most organizations requiring only a nano in terms of IT capability, but ending up ordering and buying a Benz and then using it like a nano at 1% capacity utilization. Think about the organizational diseconomies created today by hiring, sourcing diseconomies created by a global procurement, financial diseconomies by going for a spree of capital raising, and finally the most crucial of them, the environmental external diseconomy. A small and dangerous protein with a very high mutating capability started its journey from Wuhan in China, and then through Rome, through London, it eventually reached New York within weeks, and from there it spread out to the whole world. The world is today facing its consequences. The existing diseconomies are there. They're already there to stay, and it's up to the new normal to find out what could be a new era in terms of cost implications. let me get back to where I started and talk about Murugan. Does he epitomize the new normal? Does he represent the new unitary scale? Does he bring in completely new cost implications? Does he rearrange return on assets? All this we have to wait and watch. With that, happy Dussehra once again. Hope you like the snippet. The next snippet is coming soon. Till then, keep liking, keep commenting, and keep subscribing to your favorite channel, Marketing Learn Chain. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.